me, I like to attack the more controversial subjects because I think somebody has to do it. I've tried to tell the New Thought communities that I've spoken to for years that becoming spiritually minded does not mean hiding yourself in spirit like sand and put your head in and ignore what's going on because you have all this positive thinking that you can cover it up with. I really think that being spiritual brings us into action. Now, I don't know that that action is always for everyone to go out with a sign and picket and bless those who do, and that is needed. I admire people who are standing up today for some of the injustices that are going on in the world and in America today. But many of us are more guided to work through this by coming through what I call the back door of consciousness. And where I get this idea is the fact that it says, when Christ shall come, it comes as a thief in the night. For if the man in the house was ready, he would be ready for that. So a lot of things that comes this way to us, we get ready for with a perception, with a belief, with some kind of way in which we want to see it or perceive it to be. Therefore, you go out there and you try to talk to people about injustice of something. Very few people are moved because they become defensive and they're ready to debate you, they're ready to argue their point, and you have the butting heads of opinions and beliefs and all that type of thing. So the fact that we see energy before matter, that's important, that's very important. That is the new paradigm of today. It is a shift of the paradigm of even body, mind, spirit. There is no body, mind, spirit. There's only energy at different frequencies that you see in a density of frequency. You see it as the body. Less, you see it as the soul. Higher frequency, you see it as the ether or the spirit. But it's all the same thing. Like ice, water, and steam. That's not three different things separate from each other. They're three forms of the same thing, which is a excited water molecule based upon temperature. And when the temperature is low, the molecules come together and form a more dense form called ice. When the temperature is turned up, the ice changes form into something with less molecules coming together, and there's more space, so now you have water. And as the temperature goes higher, then the molecules become really spacious into this ethereal steam or spirit that we call it. But energy is always before matter. So we have to work in the level of energy and consciousness that will change the pattern of physiology. Understand? So I wish I could go out and vote the right people in. I wish I could go out and march and change everybody from being injustice to being more justice in their thinking about different groups today. And I've tried to take on Native American. I've done gay people and the Bible. And today we're doing the healing of racism. I do not know if I will say things exactly right or correct. I want to say that now. If I say something that is offensive to anyone, please see me. Come to me, and I will listen to you, I promise you, and I will do my best to grow also from you who are living a certain experience that is different from someone else's experience. First of all, I want to start out with who are we as a little small group of people, of 40, 50 people, that can make any difference at all? And that's what the ego voice in you is going to tell you, is that it takes lots of people to change the world. That is wrong. Sometimes only one person has changed the world. Look at what Gandhi did. Gandhi. Look at what Martin Luther King has done to this point. Others are one person who was used and did not compromise themselves, but held into nonviolence, and held peace. Important to realize that a little leaveneth affects the whole lump, the Bible says. So a little bit of something can affect everything. I want to start out by giving you just an idea of that in Exodus 28 and 30 that talks about the high priest. The high priest was the one who could go in once to the most holy place of the tabernacle of the Israelites. And he went in not for himself, but he went in for all of the 12 tribes of Israel, which were about 2 million people at that time. 2 million people had divided themselves into 12 tribes. And it says that when he went in, he had a breastpiece of judgment. Now, I know you don't like the word judgment, but really judgment means setting divine order. It's not the kind of judgment that you think of judging each other, but it is bringing a divine order, a spiritual order. You shall put the Urim lights and the Thummim perfection to be used for determining God's will in matter. There shall be over Aaron's heart, very important, whenever he goes before the Lord. There's a picture of this. And Aaron shall always carry the verdict, judicial decisions of the sons and daughters of Israel over his heart before the Lord. So if you look at this, you're going to see there are 12 stones. Stones that some of you would recognize. The amethyst, the sardis. You that work with stones are all in this breastplate. The onyx stone, carbuncle stone, all of those, representing all the tribes of Israel. And because of holding all in his heart, all received the blessing of this one man. All of the so-called sins, and I will use the word sin in the Old Testament because sin was breaking the law. If you broke a law, that was a sin. Okay? And those who kept with that, and of course everybody sinned because there was 613 laws to take care of, and nobody could do it. So everybody needed what was called an atonement, a release of their sins. We would say today the release of our human idiosyncrasies. The times that we are not in love, but we're in fear. Times that we're not in peace, but we're in inner warrings with ourselves. We all have those times that we're not in alignment with the divine part of ourself. And therefore we need atonement or forgiveness or to undo them in some way. So he would go in once a year with all of these stones representing everybody. In other words, they didn't have to do it. They got the benefit because one man went into the Shekinah presence of the most holy place where the mercy seat of God, and every person, all 2 million people, was atoned for all the sin they had done. So today I'm asking you to be that collective priesthood after the order of Melchizedek to enter in for the all that is out there. All of the injustice that is going on will be affected by where we enter into today with this subject. Can I get an amen for that? Amen. Thank you. Let it be so. Nathan Rustine, and I quote, "Most white Americans equate racism with the activities of the Ku Klux Klan, the skinheads, the neo-Nazis who direct acts of violence at people of color. They don't realize that the disease manifests in more subtle ways. Racism is institutionalized racial prejudice. The United States of America was founded by men who believed that the people of color were inherently inferior to whites. They created a collective consciousness from which institutions were born that reflected their racial views. Schools, courts, legislative bodies, businesses, the arts and sports, and even churches were infected. Racism is a natural outgrowth of a multicultural society that's ignorant of the principle of the oneness of mankind." This message today is mostly for the white Europeans, but also to all that are here. Because now we're seeing racism shifting, and sometimes we have reverse racism. I've experienced it as a Caucasian white person. I know what that is, to go into a place and to not be treated well. So racism is spreading its disease everywhere. And that's why I want to address it today. Because of what we're doing, we want to diminish this pain body of racism. And the more we can diminish it, the more that we can heal ourselves and that we can become greater people. Of course, I always use Jesus as an example. In Philippians 1:12 and 7, it says, Jesus made himself of no reputation and took upon him the form of a servant and was made in the likeness of mankind. So I don't want to stay on this, but I want to deal with this very controversial idea of slavery. I am learning that in my study and research, which has always been what I've done for 5 decades, and I've tried to research everything that I put out. I want to know where it come from. I want to know the context. I want to know the language. I want to know the culture. I want to know the context in which I'm talking from. So I've realized that a lot of things that are seen and feeds injustice in the world has come from religious thinking. A lot of the ills of our time and dis-ease of our time has been based upon religious thinking. Even at the time that politics and religion was more together, which it's trying to do again, as we are in this time, there is less separation between church and state than I've ever seen in my lifetime. I found out that actually the word that has been translated slave is an absolutely incorrect word. The word that has been translated is Ebed, E-B-E-D, and actually means servants. Now there's a difference in a slave and a servant. Of course, changing this to slave gave validation to slavery. Even those who were teaching differently, even those who were politically putting together the Constitution that all people are created equal and all people have the right to pursue peace and righteousness and prosperity and all the good things. I was just telling the class today that I just learned recently that one word was taken out of the Constitution. I did not know this. One word that made all the difference, and it was the word inherent. In other words, the Constitution should have read that people by their birth have a right. Not by just the citizenship, but by the birth of just being born, have the right that everybody else has. But when they took that out, it became only addressed to a certain segment of the population, which unfortunately was being put together by Caucasian white European men who had gone through the revelation and the revolution of becoming free from Great Britain. So I was thinking about the show that Tim and I really enjoyed when it was on, and that was Downton Abbey. And what I loved about it was in those days, people were proud servants. They weren't slaves, they were servants. They were people who stepped up to a profession that they had pride in, and they were treated well. They were paid well, they were taken care of well. Today, we all want to be servants. We want to serve the highest good. We want to serve the best. We want to serve each other. We want to serve our community. We want to serve our families. Again, Jesus said that he made himself of no reputation and was made a servant and was made in the likeness of mankind. It also says that Jesus tells us that I came not to be served, but I came to serve. I believe that's written at the YMCA around the corner. That scripture in Luke, that I came not to be served, I came to serve. So again, translation is the ego's playground. And that has been my goal, is to try to correct all this. I would have much rather had a different path than the path I've had, where I could just make cute little things up from where we are. But I've always been a person that is trying to dig out and correct some of the things that religion has done to give us misperceptions about subjects and things like that. In Acts 17 and 26, I love the scripture. It says, "And he hath made of one blood all nations of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and hath determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation." What that tells us is we all share in the blood. The blood is the life. Life is in the blood itself. And any one of us cut ourselves here, we will all, what? Bleed the same blood. There is not white blood or African American blood or Asian blood or Hispanic blood. There is the one blood that carries the life of the entire human race. Also, Galatians 3 and 28. Now this is a translation of the Apostle Paul. Now Apostle Paul did not start out here to what I'm getting ready to read you. Paul started out with putting women in their place. Women should be silent. Women should be in subjection of their husband, and men and all of that kind of thing. That was his first letters that he wrote. But the thing was, Paul grew. Paul grew. And after all that he did to divide and separate the people of the first early churches, here's what he finally comes up with in the latter part of his writings in Galatians 3:28. "There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond or free, there is neither male nor female, there is neither gay or straight, there is neither black or white or brown or Asian, but we are all one in Christ." That is where it all happens. I've been very clear to you that I am a person who believes in both evolution and creationism. I am a creationist. You won't find that word in the dictionary. You may someday. But I made that word up to describe myself as a creationist, a person who sees the benefit of understanding evolution as well as creation. I think that the answer for racism is found more in evolution than creation. I believe that evolution tells the story of our biology, our humanity, while creation tells us who we truly are as spirit beings. I have seen a lot of documentaries and things on evolution. And for me, this is what I've come up with, and I hope you're ready for this. But I am an African American. I will say it again. I am an African American. I'm just an African American that my ancestors left Africa and went to other regions in which we adapted to become different shades and different colors, and our DNA was changed. And I will read some of that to you here. Scientists have long suspected that racial categories recognized by society are not reflected on the genetic level, New York Times. Race is a social concept, not a scientific one, said Dr. J. Craig Venter, head of the Genomic Corporation of Rockville, Maryland. Here's what he said. "We all evolved in the last 100,000 years from the same small number of tribes that migrated out of Africa and colonized the world." New York Times. "By this theory, Modern Homo sapiens originated in Africa 200,000 to 100,000 years ago, at which point a relatively small number of them, maybe 10,000 or so, began migrating into the Middle East, Europe, Asia, and across the Bering landmass into the Americas. As they traveled, they seem to have completely or largely displaced humans already living in the various continents, either through calculated acts of genocide or simply out of producing themselves into extinction. If you ask what percentage of your genes is reflected in your external appearance, the basis by which we talk about race, the answer seems to be the range of 0.01%. The only thing that separates us genetically is 1/100th%. That means that everything you see out here that's going on in this third dimensional world is what we have built out of the difference that we are, which is 100th% of our DNA. That's the small band that we live in. Because in that small band, we see everything that is different from ourselves. And out of that 100th% has come all of these different systems that we deal with today. Martin Luther King says the idea of superior or inferior race is a myth that has been completely refuted by anthropological evidence. Confronting racism. In other words, in the spirit, there is no racism. There is no race other than the creation of God. That's all that exists. So race is a thing that has been coined and made into this outer third dimensional world that we live in. And as I go through this every time that I talk about this, I did this morning, I will with you, and tell you that the ego's agenda has always been to separate us. To separate us. And the only way that can separate us is to use and project itself on the physical part of ourselves, which is unique and different and separate. And we should have pride in that. We should have pride in the diversity of the world and the contribution that each and every manifestation of our physical and biology has offered us as a species and as of a people. There is not any group of people that has not contributed to the better of this world. So racism speaks of who we are as physical and biological. What can we do? First of all, it starts with healing our own mind. Everything starts with ourselves, not them. Not them. Them will never do it for you. It starts within each and every one of us to heal ourselves of realizing that what I see through my five senses is not always what is the truth of creation. Therefore, we need to see differently. That's why we need our eye of enlightenment opened. For when the eye of enlightenment is open and the body is full of light, it says. Some believe that that eye is right here between the brows. In chakra terms, it's called the brow chakra. Many call it the third eye. It is where the Bini goes when you see Indian people with that little red dot right there. They're saying to you, I see you. Don't try to fool me by appearance, for I have a way of seeing beyond what you appear to be. That tells us we need our eye open, our pineal gland open, that we can see things as they truly are. And what does this do for us? And I've used the example one time of a woman that came to my meeting and she was rude and wanted to argue, and and cause disruptions, whatever. And she said she wanted prayer, and people tried to pray for her, and she was really fighting it, and was just, and people were just giving up right and left and going back to their seat like, oh, well, there's nothing we can do. And I felt that way too at that point. And all of a sudden, something just came over me like a veil went over my mind. And all of a sudden, I could hear her heart saying, please don't stop. I really desire and need your help. But she was so fearful and defensive externally that everybody was stopping with what she appeared to be. But I heard the cry of her heart. And I realized I had to get through that wall that she had built. I realized I had to get through that defense mechanism that she was projecting out, that wasn't the real her. The real her was that spiritual self crying out to be free from the prison of this human emotional mental state that she found herself in. And I decided to see her that way and treat her that way. And when I did, I was able to reach her heart, and she broke down in tears and cried and fell into my arms. And I was just there and held her for the longest time. And I thought, I'm so glad I didn't give up. When everybody was ready to give up because of her external reactions that she was going through, I was so glad that my spiritual eye was open to see the true intent of the heart of this individual. I would suggest that we all work on that, to exercise our ability to truly see that when people attack us and say horrible things, that's really not what's going on. They're just projecting their own fears upon a people or a person in some way. A line from the Course in Miracles has helped me the most with that, and that's all attack is a call for love. All attack is a call for love. Remember that the next time you walk by the TV and CNN's on. Or Fox News, which are when you watch and realize maybe this is not really what's going on. So what can we do? This is a time for prayer, and not a prayer only, but it's a time for spiritual action. It's time to open the floodgates of love. This is time to act for justice. What can we do? Educate yourself about racism and privilege. Again, I don't really believe that all people are so into racism based upon the color of people's skin. I do believe, in the quote I just gave you, that it is a cultural, social misunderstanding that is going on. Now, we have a wonderful integrated group here, and I'm proud of that. That's my vision. That's my desire always, to have a well-balanced, inclusive community of people. But that doesn't mean because we're saying mentally, oh, well, I'm not racial, I'm not into that. We can do all of that, but truly we need to make sure there's nothing that is hiding in the basement of our soul. We need to do some basement house cleaning of anything that has been put there, even especially from the first years of our life, from up to 7 to 12, and these early chakras. You have to go in and you have to do the clearing. And we're offering you that here in this community. I hope you'll take advantage of it. Whether it's Gail who wants to work with you, she offered 10 free tunings because she needs to do that for what she's doing as a teacher. But you have the access here of even myself. But make sure that you get your first 3 chakras cleared out, so there is nothing that is in the subconscious that you don't know about, that is kind of lurking there, that can show up even when you do not expect it. Because it happens. It happens. If you all would be honest with yourselves, you would have to say, there are times I wonder, where did that come from? I don't even think that way anymore. I thought I believed differently. And yet something triggers that, something deep within you that you thought you had taken care of. Clearing is one of the most important things, and clearing comes under the term forgiveness. Forgiveness means to undo something. So educate yourself. I think we should have the conversation. People ask me all the time, why does African Americans do this or do that. I'm sure African Americans get it. Why aren't white people that way, and why they do that? And why don't they have more rhythm or something? I don't know. Whatever you say. Whatever your thing is about us, I don't know. But I think maybe a time would come together to have the conversation with each other, to understand our cultures and our social standings that we come from, that we bring to the table. I think would be very healthy for us as a people that is inclusive. Help the vote writers with ensuring greater access to basic voting rights for all citizens. Please, this is a time to become somewhat active, if you'd like, to help to make sure people get to the polls and vote their consciousness. This is going to be one of the most important elections probably of our time that we know of. And we can't sit back and talk about what all's wrong and what we don't like and not remain a part of it. And I know that voice in you that says, oh well, they're going to do what they want to do. It's all rigged and all this and all that. But remember, your energy is important. And when you do something like that, you are bringing your energy, your intention into it. So please do that.
I don't know if you know Marianne Williamson is coming to Charlotte this
No.
Yeah.
Marianne Williamson is coming.
This Wednesday. Where? The Heist Brewery. Heist Brewery at 6:30, I think.
Okay, well that would be interesting.
No tickets left.
She certainly is the one that has the message. Work to overturn punitive drug laws. Way too many people are sitting in prisons that are not really criminals whatsoever. There are more people incarcerated in the United States of America than any country, and most of it is injustice. We definitely need to put that on our agenda. Talk to your friends and neighbors. Learn from each other. This part of town that we live in, most of us that live in this part of town, live in a very integrated part of the city. The addition that I live in is very, very integrated addition that we live in. Most of our neighbors are African Americans and other races also, but African Americans. We need to talk to our neighbors and connect to them. This is important. Get to know hopes and fears. What are the hopes that we have and what is the fears? Organize in your communities to address violence and corruption in police, security forces, and prisons. Plant a garden in an empty lot. Feed people. Wow. Make art. Educate children. Take time. Volunteer. Dance. Study. Raise awareness. Educate yourself. Help educate others. Speak up. Sit down. Stand tall. Ask yourself, what might a society based on love and mutual aid and mutual respect look like? We need to put that on our vision board. How many is looking at that vision board that goes over there? You've got to look at it. You've got to look what's on there, and you need to put more on it. Bring your visions. And when we look at it, we're bringing it in to our consciousness, and we keep bringing it in until it becomes collective and strong to continue to manifest itself. We must do our part. The only failure is to stop trying. Blessings on a society that is rooted in confusion and bound by fear. Blessings onto the change agents that fight for a future that is not guaranteed. For a moment, I want to talk about the collective racial pain body. We know how pronounced it was in Jewish people who have suffered persecution for over many centuries. It's still alive today. Semitism is as strong and as well as in Native Americans whose number were decimated by those cultures, all destroyed by the European settlers. In black Americans too, the collective pain body is pronounced. Their ancestors were violently uprooted, beaten into submission, and sold into slavery. The foundation of the American economic prosperity tested on the labor. Now listen to this. This is important. The foundation of American economic prosperity rested on the labor of 4 to 5 million black slaves. In fact, the suffering inflicted on Native and black Americans has not remained confined to those two races, but has become a part of the collective American pain body. It's always the case that both victim and perpetrator suffer the consequences of any acts of violence, oppression, or brutality. For what you do to others, you do to yourself. It doesn't matter what proportion of your pain body belongs to you, your nation, or race, and what proportion is personal. In either case, you can only go beyond it by taking responsibility for your inner state now. So let it start with me, the individual. What needs to be healed in me? I want to say that what I'm trying to say here is that we are basically not different in our genetic DNA. We all share it. In fact, you might not want to hear this, but you share most of the same DNA as a fruit fly. That's really true. That's science. We all share in nature. Everything in human nature has come from DNA. And that's why I got into DNA work 30 years ago. And I've said this before, is everybody's trying to change their world by changing their thoughts. You can change a lot by how you think, no doubt about it. You can become a better, pleasant, positive person. But whatever you think, even if you think positive, you realize that everything will always try to return back to the blueprint who made us the human race. Therefore, you do not change the genetic blueprint. At some point, you will not change what patterns and models the systems of this world. I wish I could do it by changing laws. Yes, absolutely. These are good things to do. There are better laws to be had. There's ways we can grow and do much better than we are doing. But our work is deep work. We're here to work into the depths of the human psyche, into the collective consciousness that ties us all together into this world models that we have today. So we've established that through basically science. So where does the issue really lie? In our cultures. The way we may dress, our hairstyles, yes, and all the things that the ego points out is, I'm not you and you're not me. Always the agenda of ego is to divide and to conquer. We see what we call the ego, which has already put itself together into systems that are in our politics and religion, science, education systems. All these systems care a perception based upon this little band that we live in. I'm not you and you're not me. Talk about Marianne Williamson, you that saw the debate which she was on and pushed way down the line and was totally, you could tell, being ignored as no one to take seriously whatsoever. The 2 or 3 times that she was offered to express was powerful and caught a lot of people's attention to what she had to say. But they see her as the little minister, the little preacher. You know, we're so hypocritical about this. We call ourselves, first of all, a religious country. We're a Christian country. But when it comes to the spirituality of Christianity, we are not comfortable with that whatsoever. There's a little information for you. People like Marianne Williamson wants and realizes that nothing out here, whether it's racism or genders or homophobia or other isms that are dividing us, will never change until we change the soul of it. We have to change the soul of racism. When we do, racism will change. We must work to change and transform the soul. You shall prosper as the soul does prosper. The second thing that I want to say again, that it takes having a conversation. An open conversation. A conversation of people who have reached a level of consciousness to not feel in any way attacked, or a generation that will not feel defensive, but will realize that all of these things are barriers to break through, walls to break down. There's some out there trying to build the walls, and there's some of us trying to tear down the walls. Too many walls already have been built inside of ourselves. So I'd like for you to join me and in an amends between humankind and humankind. I will read in the white, and you will say after me in the yellow print. Let's all take a deep breath, center ourselves, and let's set our intention for the highest good to be accomplished here through these words. That through these words of amendment we will weaken and diminish the pain body that has been created over us, and we will begin to come back home, to spirit, to creation, to oneness and unity. If I or any other person has ever done anything to hurt you or offend you or demean you or belittle you, I apologize. Please forgive me. If you have ever felt unappreciated, uncherished, dishonored, or your selfhood betrayed in any way, I am so sorry. May your beauty and your power now burst forth into our world and into our consciousness. Together? May your soul be healed.
May your mind be healed.
May your body be healed.
May your past be healed and your future be made new and strong.
May you reach your fullest joy. I now commit to you and to God that henceforward I shall see your value. I shall honor you. I will appreciate you and cherish you. I shall recognize the divinity in you. Go with my love and the love of all humankind forever.
And together we say, Amen, and so it is.
I personally, I'm not against this idea of reparations. Not on the monetary level so much. I'm not sure how much people would get, even if they put in billions of dollars. That doesn't go very far today in today's economy. But it is karmic. It is karmic. That's the energy of it, is that it would do something on a karmic level that needs to be done. We as Caucasians must look at ourselves and make sure that if there's anything in us that makes us feel to be the privileged race, that we need to heal that part of ourselves. How do you do it? You ask the Holy Spirit, please heal that part of my mind that makes me in any way attached to an idea that I'm privileged above other people. So I hope I've done well to take on this very touchy subject, but I just want you to know I'm glad it's over. And I do want to close with this last thing. Where collective consciousness does not operate out of an understanding of oneness of mankind, the soil is fertile for fears and all kinds of isms to develop. So to insist today that racism is a thing of the past points out it's like an end to cancer without providing a cure. And to simply study it objectively in terms of group statistics is an expression of the same psycho-spiritual disease, a fundamental breakdown in human relatedness, and that sense of psychology that approaches racism in the soulless manner of guilty of dehumanization. So in other words, where there is love, fear will show up. We certainly need to love unconditionally and let Spirit flow through us that we may see as God sees us, all as His offspring and His children who have been given the rights and the birthrights of heaven. You don't have to die to go there. The birthrights of heaven is yours today. Receive it. And now may this message and the intent of this message be taken by the angels of the four corners of this planet, to the east, to the west, to the south, and to the north, and into the collective consciousness and unconsciousness, not only of our nation, but of the world today. May we in some way have exposed the techniques and systems of ego and have diminished the paying body of race in this nation, in this state, in this city, in this community. I am proud. As I've said to you, I believe it's Martin Luther King says Sunday is the most segregated day in America. White people go to white churches, African Americans go to African American churches, and I'm proud to say we're breaking that mold. We are the new model here at HeartLight Center. And I appreciate that I don't feel deep resentments based upon race or upon gender or orientation in this community. So please appreciate and be grateful for the level of consciousness you've been brought through and up to through more metaphysical, spiritual, new thought teachings has brought us to this place. Now we can build. I said only now we can build. Yes. Don't think this is the building. This is the foundation that's being laid, that we can build a new building, and this latter building shall be greater than the former building. It is the building where the glory and the Shekinah glory of God dwells in each and every one of us. Thank you very much. You ever hue colors? You know, in art, I used to take a red and I put more water in, I got less red. And I got paler and paler and paler until I hued the original color down. Humans are a paler shade of what God created them to be. I'm sorry, I just made preach here for just a minute.
Come on with it.
But they said of Jesus, what manner of man is this? The humans looked at somebody that didn't have the hue in them and saw somebody that was here on the vibration of what God was made manifest in a human experience. Oh, somebody help me now.
Amen.
And he said, as I've raised myself out of a paler shade of what God created me be, so shall you be resurrected and raised out of this lower frequency of a hewed down version to become that which God is in the earth.
Right.
When we do that, We will leave behind us and shed racism like a snake sheds its skin and crawls on. We need to move on. I'm tired of being stuck in this same old thing in which we go round and around and around, and we talk about how this is all changed and that's changed when nothing has changed in the soul and the psyche of humankind. Please become that collective man. And I say to you ladies, become that man, because the word man doesn't mean just somebody that has male stuff. Male things. But the word man comes from the word manus, which means to think. Man means a thinking consciousness of humanity. So may we become this collective thinker, this conscious, mindful person that is no longer asleep in the third dimension density of a system that is based upon 1/100th of difference between me and you as a human being. I'm broadening that band to become more than that today. All right, that's all I'll say about that.
Time to let your heart light shine. Time to let your heart light shine.